Welcome to our deep dive into Planet Labs PBC.
Planet Labs.
Yeah, you might know them as PL, the company that's essentially putting an eye in the sky.
Right.
They're imaging the entire Earth every single day with their constellation of over 200 satellites.
That's a lot of satellites.
It's incredible. And today, we're going to be using the principles of value investing, made famous by Warren Buffett himself,
Right.
to determine if PL is a shooting star or about to burn up on re-entry.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable what they're doing. Think of it less like a company and more like building a Earth data empire.
An Earth data empire.
Yeah, their mission is to make global change visible, accessible, and actionable.
I like that.
And with daily high-resolution images of the Earth's landmass, they're well on their way to achieving that.
So they are gathering all this data, but what are they actually doing with it?
Well, they've developed a whole suite of products and services to make that data work for various customers.
Right.
So, for example, planet monitoring gives you high-frequency data so you can track changes over time, like watching a forest grow or a city expand.
So you can see the changes over time.
Exactly. And then you have planet tasking, which is for more targeted, detailed analysis of specific locations. And they even have analytic feeds that utilize machine learning to highlight specific features or objects within that massive data set.
So they're not just selling raw images, they're turning that data into
Actionable intelligence.
actionable intelligence.
Precisely. And their position in the Earth observation market is pretty dominant.
Okay.
Remember those 200-plus satellites they currently operate?
Yep.
That's the largest commercial constellation out there. And they've attracted over 1,000 customers globally, including government agencies, research institutions, businesses across sectors like agriculture, defense, and mapping.
That's a diverse client base, and their reach is truly global. With all that imagery, they're collecting over 350 million square kilometers worth of data every day.
Every day.
That's incredible. So how did that translate into dollars and cents? How is PL generating revenue?
Primarily through those customers we were just talking about. They have a lot of subscription-based contracts.
Okay.
And they've also secured some pretty hefty government contracts,
Right.
which tend to be more reliable in terms of revenue flow. And of course, they offer professional services to help their clients make sense of all that data and integrate it into their own workflows.
All right, so they have the technology, a diverse customer base, and a solid revenue strategy. But let's talk about the people behind the scenes, the masterminds behind these satellites. Does PL's leadership have what it takes to steer this ship to success?
Well, PL's leadership has a pretty impressive track record.
Right.
The co-founder and CEO, Will Marshall, has deep roots in the Earth observation field, and he's assembled a team that has successfully deployed and operated hundreds of satellites, not to mention building a large and diverse customer base.
Right.
They've also made strategic acquisitions, like bringing companies like Blackbridge and Terabella under the PL umbrella, along with their satellite constellations, of course.
So that sounds like a well-oiled machine. But running a company, especially one with such ambitious goals, must come with its fair share of challenges. What have been some of the hurdles that PL has faced?
Well, like any company, they've had their bumps in the road.
Yeah.
In 2023, for example, they had to make some difficult decisions, including workforce reductions,
Good.
which they attributed to restructuring some cost-cutting measures and addressing some challenges they had in their software production pipeline. They've also mentioned some headwinds in the commercial market, which is something to keep an eye on.
So some growing pains, but it sounds like they're taking steps to address them. What stands out to you as a particularly positive sign in terms of their management?
One thing I find particularly encouraging is their commitment to transparency.
Okay.
They're a public benefit corporation, which means they're committed to operating in a socially responsible way, and they're very open with investors and really seem to prioritize ethical practices.
So we've talked business model and management now. Let's get to the heart of the matter, their financials. Are we looking at a company that's on solid financial ground, or is there cause for concern?
Well, P&L isn't profitable yet, but they're showing some promising signs of financial strength.
Okay.
Their revenue is growing. Their gross margins are improving. Plus, they have a strong balance sheet with very low debt and over $242 million in cash at the end of Q3 2025.
Hold on, no debt and $250 million in cash on hand. That's impressive, especially for a company that hasn't reached profitability.
It is, but it's important to look at the complete picture. They're still operating with negative operating and net margins. Those are showing some improvement.
Right.
They've also seen a decline in commercial revenue recently, attributing it to the macroeconomic environment and some sector-specific weaknesses.
So a mixed bag on the financial front. What's the overall outlook?
Well, there's a range of opinions out there. Some analysts are optimistic about their future growth, while others are more cautious, despite that their stock price has jumped over 75% recently. And some analysts believe it's still a potential buy for those looking at long-term potential.
This is where it gets really interesting. We'll be right back to unpack market sentiment and take a closer look at PL's ownership structure and risk profile. Stay with us.
Welcome back to your deep dive into Planet Labs PBC.
Planet Labs.
So far, we've seen that PL has a really interesting business model. Their leadership seems to be navigating some pretty complex challenges, and their financials are, well, a bit of a mixed bag.
Right.
But there's one crucial element we haven't explored yet. How is PL actually perceived in the market?
Market sentiment can be tricky to gauge, especially with a company like PL, which operates in a rapidly evolving and somewhat volatile industry.
Okay.
Their stock has been on quite the roller coaster ride since its IPO, reflecting both the high hopes and the inherent risks that come with the territory.
So what's been driving these fluctuations? What kind of news or events have investors been reacting to?
Well, on the positive side, they've recently secured some significant government contracts, and that's always a good sign for a company like PL.
Uh-huh.
And they've also been making some noise with their advancements in AI technology.
Government contracts and cutting-edge tech. That seems like a recipe for investor confidence.
Yeah.
But didn't you mention that analyst opinions were a bit mixed?
Some analysts see a lot of potential for growth, while others are forecasting a possible downside in the stock's value. It's a classic case of proceed with caution, where investors really need to do their homework.
It's a bit of a tug of war between optimism and caution. But I'm curious, haven't we also seen some pretty strong performance from their stock recently?
We have, and that's what makes things so fascinating, despite some analysts predicting a potential dip.
Yeah.
PL's stock has actually delivered a remarkable 75.3% return year to date. It's a bit of a head-scratcher.
It does make you wonder if those cautious analysts might be missing something. Perhaps they're underestimating PL's long-term potential.
That's certainly a possibility, but before we jump to any conclusions, let's shift gears and take a closer look at the ownership structure of Planet Labs.
Okay.
Who are the key players holding the reins, and what does that tell us about the company's direction?
All right, ownership structure, who's calling the shots at Planet Labs?
Well, it's a bit of a mixed bag here as well. We see the usual suspects, institutional investors like BlackRock and Vanguard.
Okay.
These big players hold significant stakes in PL, which is usually seen as a positive sign.
Right.
It suggests that some of the most experienced investors out there see value in the company.
So Wall Street is betting on Planet Labs. That seems like a pretty strong endorsement.
It's definitely a factor to consider, but there's another interesting element here. Insider ownership is also quite high.
Okay.
This means that the people running the company, including executives and employees, have a lot invested in its success, literally.
So their interests are aligned with those of everyday investors. Sounds like a pretty solid ownership structure. But earlier you mentioned something about potential drawbacks.
Right. One potential concern is that ownership is relatively concentrated among those institutions and insiders we just talked about. This could potentially limit the influence of individual investors like you.
So less room for the little guy to make a splash. That's something to keep in mind.
It is, but overall, the ownership structure seems fairly stable. Now let's move on to the part where we put on our skeptical hats and really delve into the risks associated with investing in Planet Labs.
Okay.
Every investment has its ups and downs.
Right.
So let's explore what could potentially go wrong.
Time for a reality check. What are the risks that stand out to you?
Let's do a classic SWOT analysis, breaking things down into strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that'll give us a well-rounded view.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
Let's start with the positives. What are Planet Labs' biggest strengths?
Well, their vast satellite fleet and that massive data archive they've built are undeniably huge assets. Yeah.
They also have a unique advantage in providing high-frequency global coverage, something their competitors struggle to match. And of course, their strong relationships with government agencies provide a steady stream of revenue and give them a lot of credibility.
Okay.
And finally, their focus on AI and innovation is a major strength in an industry that's constantly evolving.
So a lot going for them. But no company is perfect.
Of course not.
Where could PL improve? What are some of their weaknesses?
Well, their ongoing struggle with profitability is definitely a concern. They've made progress.
Right.
But consistently turning a profit is crucial for long-term sustainability.
Right. At some point, they need to show they can translate that impressive revenue into actual profit. Any other weaknesses we should be aware of?
There's also the issue of revenue visibility. It can be difficult to predict how their revenue will fluctuate from quarter to quarter, given the nature of their contracts and the overall market conditions.
Okay.
This uncertainty can make some investors nervous. And we can't forget about that softening commercial market we discussed earlier. That's definitely a challenge they'll need to address.
Right.
But let's look at the flip side. What opportunities are out there that could really propel Planet Labs forward?
Well, the potential for expanding their government contracts is huge. Government agencies are increasingly relying on Earth observation data for everything from environmental monitoring to disaster response. And PL is in a prime position to capitalize on that trend.
So those government contracts could be a real game changer. What else?
As AI continues to advance, the demand for AI-driven solutions will only grow.
Yeah.
And this plays right into PL's strengths. They're already ahead of the curve in this area, and their expertise in AI could give them a significant competitive edge.
Makes sense. So government contracts and the AI revolution are potential tailwinds.
Yeah.
What about threats? What could potentially derail PL's success?
Competition is always a factor in any industry, and the Earth observation market is no exception. New players are emerging all the time, and even established giants are investing heavily in their own satellite and data capabilities.
So it's a crowded playing field, and they need to stay ahead of the pack. Anything else keeping you up at night when it comes to Planet Labs?
Well, while those government contracts are an opportunity, they can also be a bit of a double-edged sword.
Okay.
Government budgets are notoriously unpredictable, and any delays or cancellations of contracts could have a significant impact on PL's revenue stream.
That's a good point. Relying too heavily on government contracts can be risky.
Okay.
What about the broader economic climate? Could that pose a threat?
Absolutely. Global economic downturns or unexpected events like major political shifts or natural disasters could definitely dampen demand for PL's services.
And we can't forget the ever-present threat of technological disruption. The pace of innovation in this industry is relentless. So PL needs to stay on top of its game and continue to invest in research and development.
Exactly. They can't afford to become complacent, or they risk being overtaken by competitors with newer, more advanced technology.
So we've taken a deep dive into PL's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Now it's time to put it all together and answer the big question: is Planet Labs a solid investment or one to avoid? All right, we've covered a lot of ground in our deep dive into Planet Labs PBC, their business model, their leadership, their financials, market sentiment, ownership structure, and we even did a full SWOT analysis.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
It has. So what's the verdict?
Yeah.
Is Planet Labs a company you should consider adding to your portfolio, or is it one to avoid?
It's not a simple yes or no answer, unfortunately.
Of course not.
PL is a fascinating company with a lot of potential.
Right.
But it's not without its risks.
That seems to be the theme with PL, a company full of contradictions. They've got this incredible technology and a seemingly limitless future, but they're still grappling with the realities of today's market.
Their potential for growth is undeniable.
Right.
And they are taking steps towards profitability, but they're still in a relatively early stage, and those risks we outlined are very real. It's crucial to do your own research and understand your personal risk tolerance before making any investment decisions.
That's great advice. You know, throughout this entire analysis, we've been so focused on the financial side of Planet Labs, the numbers, the stock performance, the investment potential, but we haven't really touched on something that's perhaps even more important: the ethical implications of what they're doing.
You're absolutely right. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of the technology and the potential financial gains, but we can't lose sight of the bigger picture.
I mean, think about it. They have the ability to capture images of the entire Earth every single day.
It's quite remarkable.
It's an incredible amount of power, and it raises some really profound questions about privacy surveillance and the potential misuse of this technology.
Exactly. It's a double-edged sword.
Yep.
On one hand, this data can be used for good tracking deforestation, monitoring natural disasters, even aiding in humanitarian relief efforts.
Right.
But on the other hand, it could be used for less noble purposes.
Right.
It's a conversation we need to be having as this technology becomes more powerful and more widespread.
It's not just about the financial returns. It's about the broader impact this kind of technology has on society as a whole. It's something for all of us to think about.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, there you have it.
Oh.
Your deep dive into Planet Labs. PBC is complete. We've explored their ambitious mission, their financial performance, their place in the market, and even delved into the ethical considerations surrounding their technology. Remember, you can find links to all the sources we use for this deep dive in the episode description.
And for those of you who want to explore even more companies like Planet Labs, be sure to check out the Stock Analytics AI YouTube channel.
It's a great channel.
Their team leverages the power of artificial intelligence to analyze stocks and identify potential investment opportunities. It's a fantastic resource for investors of all levels.
And one final reminder, this deep dive was for informational purposes only and should not be taken as financial advice. Investing always involves risk, so be sure to do your own research and consult with a qualified financial advisor before making any investment decisions.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future episodes. We'll be back soon with another fascinating company and all the insights you need to make informed investment decisions.
Until then, happy investing.